Hello, I'm Franey, the Director of International Programming for the festival, and we're delighted now to be able to have a conversation with the director of the film, Robin Petré. Robin, welcome. Sorry you couldn't be in Vancouver, but thank you for taking the time to be here with us now.
Sure, thank you very much for having me. Of course, I would have loved to go, but it's a difficult year.
You are speaking to us from Spain at the moment, not from the Netherlands.
Denmark.
No, excuse me, not from Denmark.
Right.
And I know you traveled a lot with the making of this film. Can you maybe tell us a bit about its inception and whether you'd already traveled a lot before making this your first feature film?
And first of all, I also studied abroad with a documentary program that's called Doc Nomads. And the whole idea is actually that you study with students from all over the world in 3 different countries. So that would be Hungary, Belgium, and Portugal. So already then I started traveling and making films altogether. And this film also began with a research trip to Scotland, Ireland, England, where I was visiting different centers and organizations who were working with marine animal rescue. And it was just to try to see their work, try to see what are the problems that they're dealing with, and if there might be a film here. And I was really inspired, and I kept on going back there, not to Scotland, but it was a nice visit. But in the end, it was the Netherlands, actually, and Ireland and England that ended up in the final film. And the centers there, the thing is that they have different expertises, and they work with different kinds of animals. So I really liked the idea of combining different rescues of different animals.
And what was your relationship with the Danish coast before you became a filmmaker?
First of all, I should say that I'm born close to the sea, but that's very common in Denmark because we're a small kingdom with a lot of islands and a lot of coastline. And there's a strong bond with the sea in our culture. And also for me personally, growing up close to the sea has it's meant a lot. I mean, we've always been going to swim in the sea in the summers and walk by the sea, and it's really like I lived as a teenager, as a kid, I lived like a 10-minute walk from the ocean. So of course it meant a lot.
Now, do you feel that you approached this film more from the animal welfare side or from the climate change side, or is there no difference, in fact?
I mean, actually, what I'm really, really interested in on a higher level is this coexistence between different species, especially our own human species, along with other kinds of animals on the planet. And sometimes this relationship can feel a little bit dysfunctional. And other times not, but I'm really interested in sort of the borders between these worlds. And what I was so interested in this film is that out of the ocean, which is this big mysterious world you don't see underneath the surface, but during a storm, for instance, something like a whale or a dolphin gets washed ashore. And then when they do so, they kind of enter our world in a way. And then people pick them up on the beach and take them to a hospital, an animal hospital. And it's such a strange misplacement of a wild animal. And what happens then? I was very curious about the reactions of the animals and also the people towards each other. And there's it's interesting to film, for me to film, like what is happening in this meeting. We don't normally meet a dolphin face to face, but what happens in this meeting? And this was actually my main starting point and continuous interest with this project, and still ongoing. So, but I mean, animal welfare and climate change are both very important layers and elements in the film. And I'm interested in both. I think that both are really, really important topics today, as the world is changing so fast and so strongly as it is.
In Vancouver, we have an internationally known public aquarium that has dealt with change and social ideas around captivity of animals and animal rescue, and had to change with the times, and of course being challenged by COVID. But I wonder what the equivalent in Denmark might be with institutions that are public institutions where there are volunteers and that dual mandate of education and animal rescue.
I mean, we do have some aquariums that some quite famous ones and impressive ones, I guess you can say, that receive visitors to have an encounter experience with some of these species that we're talking about that are a bit hidden to us if you just take a walk along the beach, right? But we actually don't have this kind of rescue initiative in place. As you see, for instance, in England, they have a very strong culture, particularly in England, around this. And this person, Dan, that we see in the film, who's driving around along the coastlines and trying to rescue these animals, these stranded animals, he's actually a leading figure in a network of more than 2,000 people all across the UK. So there's and it's a growing network. There's a growing interest in joining this volunteer network. So we don't actually have the same thing in Denmark. We do have rescue centers, but we don't have a governmental institution that actually does this kind of rescue.
And would you like
Otherwise,
to see
maybe
one?
I would have filmed in Denmark.
Would you like to see one? Are you perhaps working towards that with this film?
I mean, my purpose with the film, so to say, was not to push politicians to implement the same structures in Denmark. Of course, I mean, I think it could be great if that could work, but it's not my deepest purpose with the film, if you can say it like that.
What struck me watching the film is, there's a great interest in films about climate change, and our festival has shown many over the years, but it's not so easy to come up with an original format or a gripping hook concept to get audiences to come, audiences that have already seen a lot of similar films. So your film, I thought, was a very smart way of adding to the topic. It's got an original angle. And I wonder if that was something you were very conscious of, if you've seen a lot of films from your own peers and from older directors that are similarly concerned.
Do you mean like the way of shooting the animals and the animal perspective, or?
Not so much, perhaps like getting a film funded these days, where, for broadcasters and other funders, they often looking for an original storyline.
Right.
Whereas in some ways, the most important message is in fact repetitive. And the danger with people, with audiences and with citizens is that they tune out once they think they understand a message. So I'm just wondering about the originality of your own idea and how purposeful that was.
My previous film, this is my debut feature. So my previous short film is actually shot on a deer farm in Hungary. And it is similar to this film in that it takes on actually exclusively the perspective of the deer, of the animals. And when we were funding this next film, From the Wild Sea, that short film was a really strong reference point, also in securing funding and moving the project forward. And I definitely think you have a point that some of the most important messages, right? It can feel a bit repetitive when you see maybe many films on climate change, but I wasn't actually choosing this way of filming or structuring the story with the purpose of making something original. It was simply what I was drawn to as an artist, as a human being. I'm incredibly fascinated with animals in many ways. And I have a deep love for animals as well.
So philosophically then, standing back and thinking of how societies, well, let's say more informed society, more enlightened or educated societies, views on our relationship to animals as human beings. Where do you think we need to go? What are the most important imperatives for us as a species, beyond the obvious, just being more inclusive and less anthropocentric, in terms of political programs?
Yeah, but I think that anthropocentric is a really important word in this regard, actually, because that was also a main point of the film, and also previous films that I've worked on, is this human gaze, that we tend to see everything so much from our own perspective, and also only have an eye for our own benefits. And the thing is that there's a catch-22, because if we do everything just to our own human benefit, in the end, we actually would go extinct as well, because we cannot exist without other life. And even like animals that we don't care about, that aren't as cute or beautiful as a seal or a dolphin in this film, they're also important. A beetle is important in this big ecosystem. And it sounds maybe banal, but I really feel, even if it might be banal, that people totally forget about it or disregard it in everyday life. It's not really any focus in the politics that are being made. It seems that money is driving everything, and apart from money, there's the human interest. But this disregard for animal interest and the right for nature to exist for its own sake and not for our sake, this disregard is actually, it's going to impact ourselves as a species negatively.
For someone of my age, growing up in the 60s with counterculture, I think that the environmental movement that was born there was predicated on previous generations having been bad, so to speak, and the improvement would be necessary and possible. And I think generational change is what can give us a lot of hope. But with your generation, do you feel hopeful that the values amongst your peers are values in common? And do you think that by the time you have grandchildren, that we will have seen that much again, an improvement in how we respect and live with other species?
That is a really good question. I think it's really hard for me to, as an individual, to have an overview of how big a part of the human population, also in countries that I have not even been to, countries and cultures I don't even know, to have an understanding of how many people in these countries are actually paying attention, or from my point of view, like paying the right kind of attention or enough attention to these issues. Because I really think that this changing climate, like the biodiversity loss, the changing climate, I think that they might be the greatest problems of my generations, of our lifetime. So it's hard to say, but I want to be hopeful, and I am hopeful in many ways. Also, the young people that you see in the film, they are volunteers, and they are, I mean, some of them are vegan or like active in different ways, like very conscious about their footprint, so to say, on the planet, and their like what they're consuming and their own habits in their own daily lives. So, and they are the next generation. They're 10 years younger than me. So things are changing generation by generation. And I think that there is definitely a huge focus on these issues compared to just 10 years ago, just even 5 years ago. It's really changing fast. So I'm hopeful. Of course, I cannot predict anything, but I'm really hopeful, actually.
I sense that in your film, and I think your film, in fact, makes a contribution towards raising awareness and getting the message out. And we can only hope. These are very, very challenging, difficult times with species extinction as we're seeing it now. And so many obvious things need to be done, like control of plastic and waste and pollution and the way we fish and so on. So let's hope, let's keep our fingers crossed and be advocates and make the demands to the people who can make differences. But your film does make a difference. Thank you so much for it. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you very much. I truly hope so. I hope that it can be a drop in a water or an ocean of films and music and art and everything else that can make a change.
Thank you so much, Robin.
No, thanks to you. It was a pleasure talking with you.
I really enjoyed your film, and please keep us in touch with your next work.
Yes, I would love to. And maybe next time I can go in person. That would be amazing.
Yes, I hope so.
Yes, me too.
Bye for now.
All right. Bye for now. Thank you.